Welcome to Realizing Resilience, a podcast from the Connecticut Women's Consortium. We're not behavioral health professionals, but we're your gateway to real conversations with the experts. Each episode, we'll delve into the vast landscape of mental health, from personal stories to expert insights. Together, we'll bridge the gap between clinical expertise and personal experiences, connecting with diverse voices and perspectives. Join us for insightful conversations that demystify the world of mental health.
Jen Fournier Esq is the owner and principal consultant of Racebrook Consulting, LLC, known for her expertise in nonprofit leadership, employee culture, corporate compliance, and coaching. Passionate about fostering collaboration and compassionate leadership, she actively supports the Greater New Haven nonprofit community as chair of the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce's Nonprofit Resource Council Steering Committee, president of the NAMI Elm City's Board of Directors, and a board member of the Bethel Center. A graduate of the Catholic University of America with a bachelor's in history and philosophy and a Juris Doctorate, Jen began her career at Bellevue Hospital in New York City, gaining extensive experience in health and human services.
Welcome back to Realizing Resilience. My name is Alana.
And I'm Marisa.
And today we have the pleasure of speaking with Jen Fournier Esq, who is the owner and principal consultant of Racebrook Consulting. So thank you so much for joining us, Jen.
Thank you for having me.
So first and foremost, you have a very diverse background in both human services and law. So how do you blend those experiences to create an impactful and empowering leadership training?
Yeah, great question. So I have been afforded the opportunity to train under some incredible people and had the opportunity to learn at the hand of people who gave me the opportunity to experience some really impactful leadership experiences, starting at Bellevue Hospital, all the way through leading through COVID. So I've had the opportunity to look at how the law impacts the everyday in the nonprofit sector. And instead of being in an environment where I was an outside attorney having to work with nonprofit clients, in telling them how the law was going to impact them and what they needed to do to comply, I was able to see the law in action within the organization and what it actually meant to comply and how it was actually going to impact the everyday, and that it wasn't so simple as saying, this is what the law says and this is how you have to go forth and comply. So here you go, here's the law. Make sure you check all the boxes. So because of that experience of being able to sit at the table and help people figure out what it meant to practically implement the law in a compliant way and understand the risk tolerance of organizations as well, whether it be around the budget that we had or the staffing that we had running lean, what it meant. Like, no, we don't have people that can audit. We don't have people that can run a full HR department. We don't have people that can run a full training department, and on and on and on. How do we put all of this together? And especially around, HR and leadership training, like we don't have people who are going to be able to create robust training around all of this all the time. It's allowed me to create a window into what we actually need to provide back out into the sector now. So coming out of the sector after 23 plus years and being able to reflect on what is it I really wish we had been able to receive from people coming back into our organization in a meaningful way. That's what's allowed us to create our proprietary model around empathetic accountability and create the leadership training models that we have now through Racebrook. So it's a wild ride, but we've been doing it really based on the human experience that we've had inside the sector all of this time.
Speaking of your leadership models, you'll be leading 4 of the 6 sessions of our upcoming Leadership Academy in collaboration with Racebrook. What inspired you to create this training series, and how can leaders in the behavioral health space benefit from that?
Another great question. So we have a habit in the nonprofit sector of promoting people who are highly talented, well-versed in their field, especially in the clinical space, right? They're really, really talented people. They know what they're doing. They have long-term experience. They're dedicated to the organization, the mission, and they want to promote up, right? They're deeply invested. And so we end up putting them into advanced managerial and leadership roles. We do that without formal training. We do that without teaching supervisory skills to help them navigate things like power dynamics, delegation, accountability, coaching, and having to do the work themselves. So that's incredibly difficult, especially when you're talking about social work, which is already an emotionally demanding and draining field, in particular now in this post pandemic environment, which I continually hate to talk about post pandemic as if that made social work even worse. But I think in some ways it did, right? Where we have a higher demand in mental health. We have more people who are using and abusing substances. We have more people identifying as having anxiety and depression. Um, the demand for medication management is much higher. The turnover rate in jobs is even greater. The ability to retain staff, even more challenging, right? So it has, in a lot of ways, made a social worker's life much harder, whether they're in a private practice, an independent practice, or working in a nonprofit model. So now you throw into that the fact that they have to supervise and lead either department or practice or their organization, and it makes it that much more difficult. And they can't necessarily rely on the tools that they have as social workers because there's a different level of responsibility to the organization. It's different than talking with that one patient that's in front of them, that one client that's in front of them, where they may be using different therapeutic models to work with them. In this space of leadership around people, they have to really be pushing an accountability model that says, I understand that you too are going through the exact same things that our patients might be suffering, but I also need you to get the work done. I also need you to show up. And I need you to finish your clinical documentation within a certain period of time. And I need you to get the billing done. And I need you to be present. And those are harder conversations in a different way because there's a responsible dynamic there that they don't have in the provider relationship. It's more personal in a way that there's a boundary they don't have the same level of detachment from. So creating a course where we can talk about this is what's needed from a leadership perspective. These are the amazing things that you bring to it because of your social work training that a leader of people and a leader of organizations without that training don't have. So you already are bringing this amazing set of talents and skills to it, which is fantastic. So we want to maximize that. We want to capitalize on it. However, we want to create a space where you can talk about how that also makes it extra difficult. And what is it that we can do to give you some tools to navigate an extra difficult spot because it's draining in a different way. So not only are you potentially in sessions all day long or running groups all day long and dealing with all of the catastrophes that people are bringing to the session, and then going through your own supervision and your own processing with your clinical supervisors on that. But now you have to go tell other people that they need to get their own jobs done, and also listening to their stuff as well. So we need to help people build that toolbox and help them to be resilient in that space.
So we've had the pleasure of doing training with you as a staff, which was wonderful. I think one of the things that I really admire about your training is that you have such a diverse perspective of what people are doing in all of these different service models throughout the behavioral health sphere, because what we do is so strange and so different. And I feel like when you worked with us at our retreat, it was very clear that you like had an understanding of what we did and had empathy for each person's role in the structure. So I feel like your training is so much too about leading with heart and empathy, and that's reflected in some of these titles. So in your
Yeah.
opinion, why is that important, and how does empathy and leading with kind of like a person-centered lens help with team dynamics?
Thank you for that. It's a pleasure to dive in and learn about what people are up to in their day to day. And I think I mentioned this during our training time together is that one of the things that I had the opportunity to learn about myself later in life is my ADHD and having that formal diagnosis and coming out of that space that so many women in my generation were labeled as being anxious. You're just anxious. You're a high performer, but you're an anxious person. And really going into actually, you have clinical ADHD and realizing that some of the things people thought were weird or strange or different about me are actually things that are strengths in coming into the workplace. So one of those things is being able to dive in and learn a lot about different types of organizations, roles, job responsibilities. The other is being a highly sensitive person and being able to go into a deeply empathetic place and put myself into the seat as much as possible, trying to get to that heart of the matter. What does it feel like to sit in the role of somebody who has to perform a particular job? And I also had the pleasure of working right off the bat with a leader who believed in the leadership challenge as a philosophy, and one of the key principles there is modeling the way, right? And leading with heart is a big piece of that. What matters to me most in leading with heart and empathy is really creating space to identify with the people that I'm working with and making sure that the people that are sitting around the table are seen and heard, and that it's real and honest, and that I'm not just sort of bobbleheading along and nodding and saying, yes, absolutely, but clicking the slide at the same time and just moving on. But having the conversation, right? The slide deck that we work with, the agenda that we have created is a guide for us for the day, but it's the people in the room that are going to lead the session. And we will stop, like, absolutely, like, take that time out to say, yes, tell me more about what you're feeling. Where are you going? How is this going to shape the space? Because the more people dive into that, the deeper we get to go as a group. And ultimately, that informs the people who are doing the work together. Because I step out of it, and then everybody else has to continue as a team. So the rewarding part of that is opening up the space for people to do that work together. And then, you walk out and sort of cross your fingers and your toes, and you hope that everyone has learned just enough in the space about each other to maybe be vulnerable enough and daring and courageous enough to keep the conversation going, or be open enough to recognize that someone was vulnerable in the space in a way that they can better interact and communicate going forward, which makes the team stronger. So for me, that's always the part that's most rewarding, especially when I get to go back and people are like, guess what? We did the thing. Like, we learned, or I feel a little bit calmer. I feel a little bit better. So I love that part. That's always what makes me happiest.
You spend a lot of time, obviously, dedicating to helping people be able to balance the different facets of their job. Like you said, the process other people's emotions, process their emotions, and lead all at the same time. And you're helping people like be able to manage all these different hats that they're wearing. When you yourself also have all these different hats that you wear and all these different responsibilities that you do. So how do you keep yourself grounded and resilient as a leader?
Ooh, it's so much easier to teach than to do, right? So my family definitely keeps me grounded. And when I'm able to shut off at the end of a day, no matter how long the day might be, The things that keep me grounded are spending time with my husband, spending time with our crazy Shih Tzus. We have three little Shih Tzus that have very dynamic personalities, and they will paw at me at the end of the day and be like, "You have to stop." Right? And pay attention to us and our silly antics. So that's always helpful. We love being in nature and spending time outside. So that's really helpful, especially in the warm seasons. We reset every single winter. We take some time in St. John down in the Virgin Islands. We specifically chose St. John because it's 2/3 national park. So we spend our time there snorkeling and light hiking and really being quiet. Like it's just quiet space. And that sort of sets the tone for our year. And it's a real energy builder. Like just fills me up for the year. And then people who work with me will see, like, I have St. John stickers all over everything and St. John pictures on my phone. It just constantly reminds me of like a grounding. So that helps me. Visual things help me out in that way. Being a responder for 9/11 is always in the back of my head as something that was a real crisis, a real tragedy, something that I always go back to. So no matter how rough a day is, it really sits with me that, like, that was a crisis. Today's problems we can solve tomorrow. Like, we can get through this. So I do keep myself very grounded in terms of what's drama in a day versus what's a crisis. So that's a biggie. And I'm a huge F1 fan. I love F1 racing, which I know, right? People are always like, seriously, Jen, you are a spiritual director. You are in this place of like academics and all of this other stuff, and you are a car racing fanatic. I am. I love F1. I love the engineering behind it. I love the people behind it. And of course, they all have these interesting stories. So for the entire F1 season, we joke that the week is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, practice, quali, race day. So I live for just putting the race on, even if I'm working. We like put that stuff on behind, watching some good movies, laughing. And I listen to Harry Potter all the time too. Like, I escape into my Harry Potter book. I escape into Jim Dale and his wonderful voice and dream about being at Hogwarts. And I know I'm 51 years old, and what in the world am I doing dreaming about Hogwarts? But I do. I escape into that, and good books, and just take that time and separate out. So whatever it is that people enjoy, think into it. That's always my advice, is just go think into it and be who you are. And that's what I've accepted as I've grown over time. It doesn't have to be what the rest of the world thinks into, but should be the things that you love. And so those are some of the things that I love, and things that I pop into the end of a day or the end of a week and have fun with, as diverse as Harry Potter and F1 car racing.
That's so fun. F1. I love that.
So random, right?
No, I
Oh my
have
gosh.
like one of my favorite things to do is play Fortnite, and it's like a game intended for 12-year-old boys. And I feel that way too when I'm talking about it. I'm like, I know this is stupid, but it's so fun, and it's a good distraction because it's so different from real life. Like,
Yes, it's so great, right? It's so great. And it's totally okay. Like, it really is. Knowing who you are and what makes you happy does not have to be anything in particular. And escaping into like a wonderful world of Fortnite and building places and cities and enjoying that, or wondering if I can remember what a charm is, or what is it that Hermione loves again? What is that? What is that? Whatever. Or what is downforce, and what does it mean to, have oversteer, understeer, or why does physics work this way? And why didn't I take physics again? Oh, right. Girls didn't do science when I was young. Darn it. Why didn't girls do science? It's an interesting way of being. And that's the beauty of growth, right? That's the other piece of it, is as we grow as women in this world, as caregiving women in this world, it's really wonderful to evolve into who you are and to be comfortable and to sink into who you are. And part of the work that I do is really to encourage women as young as possible to sink into and embrace and love who they are right off the bat. And that's part of the authenticity at work while being professional at the same time. That's part of taking care of yourself at work. That's also part of empathizing with other people at work while also making sure that they can be accountable to the job that they need to do. It's all in balance. And if people can do it sooner than I did, mission accomplished, right?
Beautiful and sage advice to end on. Thank you so much.
You got it.
Links will be in the description to learn more about Jen and Racebrook Consulting and sign up for their upcoming Leadership Academy. The Leadership Academy is 6 sessions spanning from April 16th to June 18th. Each session can be taken as a standalone session, or all 6 trainings can be taken for just $500. So check out the link below if you are interested in signing up for that. Also, keep up with us at the Connecticut Women's Consortium by visiting our Linktree below. Thank you for tuning in today, and we'll see you next time.